Earlier, can everybody hear me? Okay. Much better. Let me get rid of these, otherwise I'll play with them. In the first session, we were talking a lot about the differences and the role that needs play. And at the end of the session, I shared with you a story, and I know some people recognize the story. And when I first read some of the things, especially what he wrote about, "I am now the most miserable man living," and the phrase, if what I feel were equally distributed to the whole human family, there would not be one cheerful man on this earth. And that was written by Abraham Lincoln. And and when we look at some statements like that, or when we share just a part of a story, we don't catch a whole glimpse of who that person is. Just sharing that little story, it can lead you to believe this was a very, very depressed man who basically ended up taking his life, or basically was miserable and had no effect upon society. And I find that people who struggle, especially if they struggle openly, when they struggle openly, when they're willing to share with others their struggles, is the impact that they have upon this world is magnified. And when we're in a relationship and we're willing to share not only the happiness, not only the joys, but the struggles, we end up building a relationship that is not based upon, in a sense, the good times. Whenever I do a wedding, I have a phrase that I say is, "Share with each other your joys and victories, for they will bring happiness into your life, into your relationship. But if you share with each other the sorrows and the failures, they will be the super glue to your relationships." When we look back upon our lives, when you think back and try to remember the times that you felt most connected with people, they will be at times of great joy, but also when people were there when you were maybe not feeling there. I look out here and I see a lot of faces who have been through divorce recovery seminars. I see a lot of faces who I have cried with, who I have struggled with, feeling their pain and wondering why. And I believe one of the reasons why you're here today is because we built a relationship. And it is the sharing of some of those times that brings us trust, could it be? When you came in, there was a piece of a picture on your chair. What is this picture from? Does anybody know? Yeah, last week's banquet. Why do you know that, Glory? Okay. Because she saw the pieces back there and she saw some of the people that were in a skit we did. Why do you know that this is from?
Do I know it?
Yeah.
It looks like a banquet of some sort.
It looks like a banquet. Okay. Someone else who knows what this picture is from. Wayne, why do you know it's from the banquet? Because he was there to experience it. I gave out these pictures from that banquet, and I cut them up because often when we're in a relationship, all we catch is a piece of that person's life. We were not there to experience it. I'm the chaplain for COAXA, Christians Unite Against Child Sexual Abuse. It's a support group for those who have been sexually abused and the people that support them. And when someone has gone through either an extreme abusive situation or a huge loss experience, instead of seeing a whole picture, we see but a portion. And when we're in relationship with someone, we see but a portion. Oh, we might see them for 2 years. We might have known them for 3 or 4 years. Yet we are creatures, and the Scripture talks about this, we are creatures, or we are the sum total of our past. Who you are today comes from the sum total of your past. People have said to me, I remember leading one group, and I wrote an article on this once called Compassion. And someone once said to me as I was leading a group, they leaned over to me and they said, "I wish I had the compassion you did, Richard." And my first response, I was feeling a little cranky that day. And my first response was, "Are you willing to go through what I did to get it?" It says in 2 Corinthians, with the same comfort we have received, we will comfort others. And with the same abuse you have received, you will act out towards others. For many of us, the issue of trust is paramount. For all of us. Is there any relationship that you've had that is 100% completely trustworthy? I've gone from a nose that itches to a throat that itches. Yet there is one relationship, the God relationship. But I don't quite trust Him. We're going to have to get that out of the tape. Yet, in our God relationship, working on trust comes as we stay and are committed to a relationship that God is committed to. As we hear what God says, and we hear what God says through this, through what healthy people, how they interpret it. I'm using the word healthy because I believe there is such a thing as toxic faith. It says in Ecclesiastes, the man or woman who fears God will avoid all extremes. And it's generally within the extremes in which we become very unhealthy. Yet extremes come from what? What do extremes often come from? Taking a truth, carrying an extreme. Another, fear? Okay. And where does fear come from? Stressed, mistrust, someone else. Where does, what's that? Speak up. Pain from being hurt, from being harmed. Lack of faith. What does that mean? Okay. Not trusting God that He'll work in your life. But how do you end up trusting God? By moving your pieces and giving a little bit more of Him, of you to Him. And when it seems like God is not coming through, talking with God about it, or maybe saying what pieces weren't moved in the right way. This is to say our relationship with God is reflected in our relationship with others. Elizabeth Elliot, the wife of Jim Elliot, who died in Ecuador as a missionary, she once wrote, "Why do you have difficulties in relationships? Why do you have troubles in a marriage relationship?" She said, "Because you are married to a sinner. And that person is married to a sinner." And think about this, is that in our relationship with God, is God a sinner? No. Am I a sinner? Okay, does that throw me out of the relationship? No, because if I accept God's grace, then we're entering. And then for the next 20, 30, 50 years, I work out my relationship with God. Continue to work out my salvation with fear and trembling. Our relationships are based upon commitment. Yet a commitment comes as we walk slowly. Baby steps. As we make baby steps. I've heard people say, I remember one lady who came into a seminar I had and she said, "My husband has left me. He has been having affairs for 10 years with 5 different women. But that's okay. I forgive him for whatever he's done, whatever he's doing today, and whatever he'll ever do. I forgive him." And I was just kind of thrown back. And then labeling that and saying, and that's the way God would do it. Yet in our relationship with God, I'm kind of laughing because in our relationship with God at the cross of Jesus Christ, forgiveness has been thrown out to everyone. At the cross of Jesus Christ, we have been forgiven. But God chooses to have only relationship with those who accept the cross and Jesus Christ. There's a big difference there. Often in relationship we say, because I'm a Christian, I have to have a relationship with you, so go ahead and wail away on me. Because then I'll be the martyr. Then I will be your Messiah. And we make very poor Messiahs, don't we? There's a book over on that table that's called When Helping You is Hurting Me. It's talk about the Messiah trap. What does this all mean? We only see a picture in each other, and far too often, as many of you will agree, we only see part of the picture within ourselves. For years, for 30 years, I was sad. I was so sad. So sad. Do you think I was sad? Yes, I was sad. And then all of a sudden, one day, a revelation came. That for 30 years, I was not sad, I was angry. It's interesting. Sad helps us to let go of things we cannot have. And anger, the healthy, godly use of anger, helps us to stand up after we've been knocked down. I'll talk about anger in a few minutes. Helps us to stand up after we've been knocked down. So for 30 years, I was sad and trying to let go of what I could not have. Yet it was anger, so I was trying to let go of things I could not have because I was angry. And all of a sudden one day, I caught another part of the picture and realized that when I am angry, the godly use of anger tells me I am to stand up after I've been knocked down and build my integrity and build your integrity. Not tear down your integrity. How many times have you seen that? Someone get in. You ressa, fressa, sessa, fressas. Yeah. You're nothing but a low good, no. And isn't it interesting? The closer the relationship, the more extreme it seems like. The more intense. That's a better word. The more intense those feelings come out. I said something to my wife the other day. I said, and she agreed that I do this to her too. So I said, sometimes I think you treat your friends better than you treat me. And then I said, and you know what I realized? I do the same thing to you. What's even more interesting is many of us treat our enemies better than we treat our friends. Because, especially if we do it scripturally, it says scripturally what to do for your enemies. Pray for them. Ask for God's covering over them. The things that I have learned. The things that I have known growing up. I thought they prepared me. Yet the only thing that prepares me for a relationship with you, Joyce, is my relationship with God and a relationship with you. Someone once said to me, Richard, I never met anyone like you. And you know what I say? Good! There's no one else like me. And there's no one else like you. So how do we give the gift of you to me? The gift of you to me. The gift of each of you to each other. Especially in a marriage relationship. You mean a marriage relationship? I need to give the gift of who I am to my spouse? Every day. Every day. Especially when the trials and tribulations of this world kind of like make everything misty. This picture is like a puzzle. And we're to be, in a sense, investigators. That doesn't mean we be nosy. It means that we allow boundaries to be built. And for many of you, boundaries is a foreign concept. What does boundaries mean? Well, that's the walls I put up around my house, right? Nope. Yet a piece of the picture tells us more than the back of the picture. So that when you receive a piece, honor it. How do you build trust? You honor it. This afternoon we'll be talking a lot about bridging the gap. I encourage you not to miss it. There's going to be people that are not going to be here this afternoon that were here this morning. There's going to be new people here this afternoon that weren't here this morning also. Yet to be able to honor a piece saying, yeah, that's from the banquet. It's sure a nice piece of the ceiling. Is that what you got?
Yeah.
You got a piece of ceiling? Oh, it's a real, you even got a light on yours. Oh no, that's the vent. It's a nice vent though. Isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
It's cleaner now. And if it's cleaner now, it shows even things change after a while. So that when we look at a piece, we must not say, this is who it is for all time. Do people change? Yeah. A man looks at a woman in a relationship, marriage relationship, sees, are you married? Okay. You look at her. Yes, I'm just saying, you saw her, you met her. You saw the woman. You saw this woman, you said, boy, oh boy, this is what I want. Look at this lady. Now I'm embarrassing her and she's saying, shut up, Richard. But he says, this is the woman I want. This is the woman I want to live with for the rest of my life. And then later in marriage, the man will say, this isn't the same woman I married. Because the man sees what's there, loves it, and that's what he wants. A woman sees a man, says, look at Ken. All right. Whoa, 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 whoa. And loves what's there and says, look at all those possibilities. Well, somebody says, I can change. Yes, Jerry? I can change. And then what I hear often later is that there's so much possibilities here and he won't change. He hasn't grown. And you know what? The truth is there on both sides. There's that old saying, the only thing that never changes is change. Change always happens. And while this is the woman you met and loved and wanted, she's still there, isn't she? And while this is the man that you met and you see those possibilities, Now this might be, you might say, well, you're wrong, Richard, and that's okay. But you can still change him. Okay, Joyce? No. There's still the core there. And we cannot ignore either possibility. With our relationship with God, we are saved and being saved. We are sanctified, holy, set apart, and we are becoming. And the greatest gift we can give each other is the gift of letting the person be who they are. Now, last night I had a long discussion with Diane, my wife, and we were talking about when does the need of being me intersect with the need of the body of everyone else? When does what I feel or expressing of who I am, when does that begin to overshadow the fact of putting others first? Earlier I mentioned the fact in Philippians chapter 2, where it says in verse 4, each of you should look out not only for your own interests, but also for the interests of others. When I ask people, what does that verse mean? I usually hear dramatically people saying, not to be selfish, to put others first. And I like to say that's exactly what the verse is not saying. It says each one should look out for who? First of all, not only your interests. So you need to look out for your interests and also the interests of others. If we take our interest, put it above them, we're wrong. We're in error. If we take their interest and put it above ours, that's an error. Here it's arrogant. Here it's codependent. So how do you balance that? Good question. How did Jesus balance that? Jesus knew that there was only one person responsible for getting his needs met. 2, God and himself. When we go into a relationship, I find that I did one of 2 things, especially a love relationship. After having the loss of a love, I remember saying, I will never ever date again. That's the best way. That's the best way. Except it didn't always work that way. C.S. Lewis wrote, there is no safe investment. To love at all is to be vulnerable. Love anything, and your heart will be certainly wrong and possibly broken. If you want to be sure of keeping it intact, you must give your heart to no one, not even an animal. Wrap it up carefully round with hobbies and little luxuries. Avoid all entanglements. Lock it up safe in the casket or coffin of your selfishness. But in that casket, safe, dark, motionless, and airless, it will change. It will not be broken. It will become unbreakable, impenetrable, irredeemable. The only place outside of heaven where you can be perfectly safe from all the dangers of love is hell. Now that's a very strong statement. But to give your heart to another, after the loss of my love, I said I would never give my heart to another person. And things have a way of changing. I worked on becoming healthy, about expressing who I am, of sharing who God is in me, of sharing with you what I'm doing now, is sharing not only the joys, but also the sorrows. And I thought I was doing a good job, and I was. I even had support that I built for me. And then, sitting right where Chris is, I was sitting in a church service in this very room. And where Mark is sitting, there was a lady sitting there, who I turned around one day and said hi. From the time I walked there to that door, out there to the parking lot, she knew everything about me. Who I was, where I've been, where I've pastored, all my hurts, all my shame. I literally vomited on her. Whoa! And then thought later, I'm very open. That, by the way, is the way not to share who you are with someone. Basically, I was saying in my heart and in my head, if you're going to reject me, do it now, before I get to know you. Relationships are give and take. You have to give of yourself and you have to receive. You have to receive. Give of yourself and you have to receive. Each one should not only look out for their own interests, but also for the interests of others. You give of yourself, who you are. And you also have to receive. I have to receive who Jamie is. If I can't receive who Jamie is, then I encourage her not to give to me, to build a boundary. In the book, His Needs, Her Needs, which is by William Harley Jr., and it's on marriage. It's back there on the table. It's a very good book. It's in hardcover, so it's a little bit more expensive. But in his book, he talks about the 5 greatest needs of men and the 5 greatest needs of women. And these aren't hard, fast rules, but he says in all of his work with thousands and thousands of individuals, in marriage counseling and in relationship counseling, he has discovered the 5 greatest needs of men and the 5 greatest needs of women. They're not always in this order, but he says they pretty much line up this way. And I'm sharing these for one reason only. If you take these 5 and say that's the way it is, then you haven't heard what I said. Because what I'm going to say when I start is in each one of our lives while these 5 might be part of you, at times in your life they will shift position. And a need that's not even mentioned up there will come to the top. For men, which is not on this list, for men there's often the need to feel successful in some kind of career. That is very important to them. And with our society, and I think it's a good change today, is that for many women to feel successful in their career, whether it be a mother or a wife or an accountant or an account executive, yet to ignore the other 5. In his book, His Needs, Her Needs, well, there I go, spelling wrong again. 1 for men is sexual fulfillment. And I believe it is possible. This is a side note. I believe it is possible as a single person to be sexually fulfilled without being sexually active. So we go, huh? We are, in one sense, sexual creatures, and we express our sexuality every day. When a man and a woman are saving the sexual relationship for a marriage, which I believe is the biblical truth, when they do that, the man will express his sexuality through maybe giving flowers, through giving of things, through opening doors, because the other avenue is not open. After they get married, I often hear the woman saying after about a year or 2, he never buys me flowers, he never opens doors, because another avenue for his sexuality to be expressed has been opened up. For the man, connection comes in. Connection. For the woman, number 1, he says, is affection. The man says, well, that's the same thing. Wrong. Yes. Number 2, for the man, and like I said, these can be moved, is recreational companionship. It's talking about a man and a woman here. For the woman, conversation. And the woman says, conversation is recreational companionship. Man comes home from work. Wife comes home from work. Wife meets the man at the door, says, let's talk. The man says immediately, about what? The woman says, I don't know, let's just talk. Let's just share a day. How come? I find that often men are very fact-oriented. Not that women aren't. Women are fact-oriented, but they're detail-oriented. Tonight when I get home from here, and if Diane doesn't make it, first question she'll say, how did it go? And I'll say, it went fine. And she goes, tell me all about it. And I'll say, well, what do you want to know? I mean, this is the way conversation goes in our house. Because I want to be specifically asked. I mean, because, well, what do you want to know? Well, did you feel nervous? Well, yeah. Then she'll say, and I'll say, well, Jean was here, and the Diane will go, oh, what did she wear? And I'm not putting down my wife, but there's the details. Or when you shared this, and well, I shared this, and they responded very, very well. Well, how did you feel? Well, how did they respond? The details. And for us men, we're going, oh, don't get me away. Yet conversation is detail. Recreational companionship is factual. This is just something I'm finding out for myself. Recreational companionship is factual. What I mean by that is, when we're home, Diane, she'll say, Well, let's do something together. Well, I'm quite happy with you just being in the house in another room. That's fine with me. Because I know you're here and it makes me feel loved. Well, but if you're not going to talk to me, I'm going to go out with somebody. And so, where do we go here? With this one that he writes down. But 3 for the male, he says, is an attractive spouse. Attractive spouse. Attractive. That's okay. I don't speak. I'm a backwoods boy, and I say I don't speak not so well. 3 for the woman, he says, is honesty and openness. Honesty and openness. 4, I almost lost my left arm in an accident once. So when I go to write here, you'll find me writing down here at an angle like this. Like my arm doesn't move very well. So, taking care of me. For the male, domestic support. For the woman, financial security. What's domestic support? Do you back me up? You're going to back me up? You're going to back me up?
What do you mean?
That's domestic support. Is my spouse going to back me up?
You don't mean like...
No, that's dealing more with it's the fact that my wife needs to support me financially. No, that's not it. The fact of the spouse or the other person in a love relationship supporting. Mentally, emotionally, spiritual. Supportive, but domestic. We got someone over here fact-oriented. Left brain. I'm going down here because I realized that when I wrote that last one, there was nothing on the tape. Down here is affirmation. And over here, I don't feel like getting up. And there is no one else like me. Remember that. Family commitment. Family commitment. Now, many of you women might be looking, well, that's not all on my list. And that's okay. Some of you men saying, well, that's not all on my list, and they don't always come in that order. And that's okay. The thing that I like what Harley has done is he's made an attempt of speaking what the needs are so that we don't do what I call the dance of intimacy. Jan, could you stand for a minute? My dance of intimacy is that I meet Jan. This is Jan. Say hi to Jan. Sounds like an AA meeting. Hi, Jan. And when we meet someone, especially if we haven't known them a long time, we do this. How are you? Yeah. What's going on here? And we do a dance of intimacy back and forth. You can sit down. We do a dance. Each one afraid to take a step. Each one so desiring to. There was one day that Diane said to me, if we were in conversation, I was doing it. We were in conversation. And all of a sudden she said, when are we really going to say what we really mean about how we feel about each other? You give a man who's into conquering that statement. So what is he going to do? All right? I'm going to tread where every soul fears to go. And I said, I love you, Diane. And she went, You said it. I said, are you? She said, no. She did. And that within the dance of intimacy, someone has to lead, don't they? Yet for me to lead, for me to lay out who I am to you, gives you the opportunity of stepping on it. And how many of us have felt that, even within a marriage relationship? Or, as I've said to someone yesterday, to hold that person's heart or who they are in our hands. And when somebody offers you who they are, that is sacred ground. Well, what happens if they're wrong? If who they are beats me up? Then we need to get to a place of communication where I can share that has happened. So often in relationships, I have to end up saying to people, I have to tell them how to build a relationship with me. And there's only one person who knows, besides God, how a relationship with me needs to be built. And that's by me saying, as I've said to some, well, if you're going to I hear the need for you to tell me this negative thing about me. It would be very beneficial, though. I would be able to hear it if you shared with me something you liked about me first. I mean, that's a need that I have. I'm more than willing to hear criticism. The key on this is not one need here over the other, or this need over this, but that the needs exist. The needs do exist. And expressing the needs, will it cause hurt sometimes? Yes. But to express needs does not mean dooming the relationship. Townshend in his book on boundaries says that when you make boundaries, which is basically when you make a boundary is a statement of who you are. You don't make boundaries or limits with people in order to keep them away. It's not to bring them in. It's not to get them to do something. I often hear in very intimate relationships, especially a spousal relationship, is one person say, well, this person's not doing this, so I'm going to make a boundary so they'll do it. The idea behind boundaries is to discover who you are. God makes boundaries with us. God says, I allow this in my yard, I don't allow this in my yard. God knows what his yard is. And when you make a boundary, or when you set limits with somebody, anybody here, how many of you are sheep herders? No one? Oh, okay. Surprised me. No. I've herded sheep before. Of course, most people say I've done just about everything. I was a logger, an auto mechanic. I still haven't decided what I'm going to be when I grow up. But when you take sheep and you put them in a new pen, they will always eat at the boundaries. When you take sheep and you put them in a new pen that they've never been in and there's a fence, they will always eat at the fence line. And after they know and they've tested their boundaries, then they'll eat everywhere. Same thing happens when you set limits about who you are, what your yard is that you will test your limits. Others will test your limits. And in relationship, to not express the boundaries, to not express what your yard is, means one of two things. Either you're going to have to appropriate someone else's yard, which will lead to extreme conflict and harm. Because boundaries, while they hurt, they do not harm. If they begin harming, then they're not real boundaries. There's something else. By the way, have you ever heard of the 12 or the 10 boundaries in Scriptures? In Scripture, there's 10 boundaries that God talks to us about. Thou shalt not kill. Thou shalt not commit adultery. Those are boundaries that are a statement of what God wants in his yard and consequences to them. Another thing that happens is if I don't express my boundaries, kind of like something's going on like this. So I express them, something else goes on, and something else goes on. And if they're not expressed, we step out here. When you don't express a boundary or a limit or who you are, if I say, Joyce, you can't, I'm not going to let you treat me this way, whatever way this is. But I never tell you. So the next time you treat me that way, what happens? You don't know who I am. And number two, I will have an unexpressed boundary. I will still have the feelings from it being broken. But where are they all taking place? Inside. And when they're taking place inside, and that which is in darkness is not exposed to light, what happens to it? What does it turn into? Bitterness, resentment, anger. And anger's okay, but anger turned inward is depression, they say. Someone else has said, I think his name was Richard Plord, said that anger turned in and turned upside down is bitterness. Because what happens, you take the anger, you turn it in, you keep it, and then you turn it upside down, and then you're bitter at maybe all men or women instead of one person. It becomes real. And in a relationship, someone said to me recently, they were in a small group, they said, I hear you talking about these things, about relationships, about expressing who we are and who I am. Sounds like an awful lot of work. Sounds like a lot of intellectual stuff. And the statement back was, well, yeah. It's also a lot of feeling work. Every thought has a feeling, and every feeling has a thought. And when a thought and a feeling connect, what do? You get revelation. You get condemnation. No, conviction. And you get an action. That's why I encourage you, when you get a feeling and a thought, when they connect, you need to make a step. The longer you wait between the connection of the thought and the feeling, the more it becomes an intellectual exercise. Yeah, I know that. Well, why don't you do it? Well, I don't know. but I know it. We have needs. Every one of us. Men and women. This is what Harley said. I believe that there are four needs. The greatest needs we all have is not to upstart what he says. Can I turn this? Yes. Pit area. The four greatest needs I believe we all have is one, unconditional. Unconditional love, or else acceptance. Unconditional acceptance. The need to be accepted no matter what. It's like God said in Jeremiah 31, where he says to the people, the Lord appeared to us in our past, saying, I have loved you with an everlasting love, knowing that that love and acceptance will not die, even what I do. Number two is we have the need for significance. The need for significance. The need to have meaning. The need to be needed, in a sense. Does my life make an impact upon a nation that has 220 million people in it? Three is the need for security. The need for security, or else the need to belong is what I like to call it. The need to belong. The need to feel secure. Am I part? And D, 3, 4. D, in my notes it says D. Well, be congruent here, Richard. I forgot what D said. No, the need for identity. Who am I? For the need of, I think of Psalm chapter 8, where the writer writes, when I consider your heavens, the work of your fingers, the moon and the stars you have set in place, what is man that you are mindful of him? The Son of Man that you care for him. What unconditional love and acceptance, significance, security in identity. In every relationship, part of that plays a role. Each one of these characteristics can play a role in any relationship. And in a love relationship, these are the hardest to find. What I mean by that, how often have you been to a wedding and they do a unity candle at the end? And what do? There's 2 candles alongside. They pick up each candle, light the center candle, signifying the union, and blow out the outside candles. Which at times, for some people, signify the 2 have become one, so therefore the 2 are no longer there. A while back, someone said, well, when we light the unity candle, Pastor, can we leave the outside ones lit? What? Yeah, your sister-in-law. Can we leave the outside ones lit and lit? And the first thing I started saying, well, no, we always do it this way. How many of you heard that? We always do this. Richard, you do the dishes and the cooking, and I do the cleaning. We always do it that way. So if I clean, what does that mean? And that's what, yeah. In our household, I do the cooking because I'm very good at it. And I do the dishes because I'm very good at making dirt one. And Diane does the cleaning and the laundry. So if I do the laundry, therefore that means she has to do the dishes, right? Wrong. Now if I said to her beforehand, how about if I do the laundry and you do the dishes? Yes. But what's happened in the past with me, okay, I did those. Why didn't you do something in mine? Oh, you nasty person, you! And in relationships that aren't love relationships, when I say love relationships, I'm talking about that which is going towards a marriage relationship or a long-term romantic relationship. But in other relationships, we do the same thing. I've been there for you, Jamie. Now it's your turn to be there for me. Or whatever. And I discovered something in my life. As most of my life, I was there for people. If someone was hurting and someone was suffering, super friend. I don't have needs. Just throw them all upon me. Give it all, give it all, give it all to me. Some of you can relate to that. And then there came in a time in my life when I was literally devastated. As a matter of fact, I could not even work for months. And nobody was there for me. And someone explained it to me very eloquently. Richard, you have set up all your relationships that you're the strong one. And then when you're weak, they're going, wait a minute. You're strong, we're weak. It doesn't come up. But you're the one who's strong, and we're the ones that aren't. So therefore, how can I give to you? Because all of a sudden the strong part of my life is gone. So I can't minister to you because we've set up this relationship a different way. Again, in the book Boundaries by Townshend, he talks about a husband and wife that had a balance in their relationship. She wanted to be together all the time, and he wanted to be away. Well, I didn't say all the time, but what it seemed like was all the time. And in his book, he mentions something, he explains to them something. He said that, let's look at your relationship. Within your relationship, each one of you have 50 points of togetherness and 50 points of separateness. 50 points saying I need to be apart, 50 points, and together 50 points. The man has it and the woman has it. Well, what's going on in the relationship, he said, is the wife, she's expressing 100 points of togetherness. And the man is expressing 100 points of separateness. So what's happening is they have a balance, but not a mutual balance. Do you realize that in a relationship there is something that separateness can bring to a relationship that togetherness can never ever birth? If one is together all the time, longing can never be birthed. Separateness brings longing. That there are times when one individual, and it's usually expressed seemingly more by the male, of I need my time with my friends. I need my time doing this. And the hardest thing for me to do was when I got in a relationship with Diane was say, you need to continue working on these other relationships. But I want to be with you. I know that. I want to be with you. But I also know what failed in my past relationships. And today Diane has said, I'm really glad you encouraged me to keep those relationships. And even now sometimes I say, it seems like you spend more time with them than you do with me. Often in relationships we have a balance, but it's not a mutual balance. One person is expressing all the need to communicate, and the other one is expressing all the need to just be myself for a little while. And that in every relationship there needs to be a mutual balance, with the understanding that each person has their limitations. Often men have difficulty with the vocabulary of feelings. I'm not making a blanket statement. Yes, I am. Yet often it's hard for me, I remember trying to find a vocabulary of feelings. How are you feeling? With me, it was either sad, mad, glad, scared. Nothing else. Nothing. How are you feeling? Mad. And generally it was, how are you feeling? It's mad, 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 mad. Because our society says men can be mad. Yes. But if a man is sad, he's a wimp. And in our society it says women can be sad. That's okay. Yeah. Sad or depressed. But if she's mad, she's something else. Talking about society. And the truth is that we are all creatures of emotions. Why? Because you are created in God's image, and God has emotions. But what we do with them, that's a story that still has yet been told. For each one of these needs, we must first, and we're just about at a break here, we must first see the need, how these needs are met by God, before this afternoon we begin to talk about how we can get or have them expressed and possibly met within relationship. As for unconditional love, we need to look at the cross. And what I'm saying here is that if these needs cannot be met by God, they can never be met in a relationship with another human being. Unconditional love, we need to look at the cross. Greater love have no man than this, than one lay down his life for his friends. Concerning significance, God gives us what I call tool value. T-O-O-L, tool value. If we try, God will use it to bless us and others, no matter how feeble our efforts are. For God adds His power to our feeble efforts. Our job with significance is not to see what it does or why it does, but just to try. For security, how God meets that is what I call just because value. God has adopted each one of us. One, He's your natural parent. He created you. I have a saying that when God formed Richard out of the dust of the earth, and He mixed water with that and made mud, there's still some of the mud from me under His fingernails. And it talks about in Isaiah, will a mother forget the child at her breast? Yes. but I will never forget you. See, I have engraved your names upon the palms of my hand. The nails that were meant on the cross to kill were turned into an engraving tool so that every time God looks at his hands, your name is on there. You're adopted. You're secure. Design value, read Psalm 139. Especially if you have the Living Bible. Something that I highlighted in there is the psalmist says, "For you have created my innermost being. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made." Notice in there it doesn't say logically made. Because even when you do everything right, it just doesn't come out sometimes, does it? Fearfully and wonderfully made. I know that full well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was made in the secret place. When I was woven together in the depths of the earth, your eyes saw my unformed body. All the days ordained for me were written in the book before one of them came to being. How precious are your thoughts to me, O God. How vast is the sum of them. Were I to count them, they would outnumber the grains of the sand. When I awake, I am still. You are still with me. The cross says we have acceptance, unconditional love, significance. God has created no one else like you. And if you were not created, if you died today, the earth would be ripped off. Security. We often say within the Christian realm, don't lose your salvation. And I like to say what Jude says, now unto him who is able to keep you from falling, we are secure. Then lastly, individual identity. There is no one else like you. From this afternoon, we're going to be talking about bridging the gap. We're going to talk about the gifts we can give each other. We'll be talking about different levels of intimacy. Talking about how to resolve conflict. About not being an archaeologist or the psychologist or the preacher within a relationship. We'll be talking about the 3 determiners of whether or not a relationship will continue or last. About the importance of valuing. And I encourage you between now and then to take some time. Write down some questions. Please hand them to me, even if there's a big pile up here. And be able to share with me who you are. And as you go to lunch, we'll be going to lunch in about 20 minutes. Don't go by yourself, even if you're brown bagging it here. Go with someone and talk about some of the things that we've talked about and how Richard is wrong. That's okay. Doesn't change the truth. No, it's arrogant. In a minute, we'll be taking up an offering. Whenever we hold a seminar here at Oak Christian Center, we always hold it free will offering. At other churches, by the way, back on the table there is